There is a quiet betrayal that happens to many people after 60. It does not announce itself with pain or drama. It whispers. One morning you open a jar and your hand hesitates. You stand from a chair and feel a delay, like your body is asking permission. You tell yourself it is age, that this is the price of time. But here is the truth most people never hear. What is fading is not you. It is not your will. It is not your purpose. It is muscle. And muscle only retreats when it is no longer invited to stay. For years we have been told to sip our strength from cups and bowls, to believe that warmth and tradition alone will save us. Comfort foods, old remedies, familiar advice, but comfort has never built resilience. Comfort does not signal the body to rise. Growth has always answered a different language, a language of challenge, nourishment, and clear instruction. Imagine a house that was once full of laughter, now slowly emptying, not because the people left, but because the rooms were never used again. Muscles are like that. They are not dying. They are waiting for a signal strong enough to remind them why they exist. This is not about fighting age. That is a losing battle and a pointless one. This is about refusing quiet surrender. This is about understanding that the body, even later in life, is still listening, still adapting, still capable of surprising strength when it is given the right message. Today is not about fear of weakness. It is about reclaiming authority over your physical presence in the world, about choosing food not as comfort but as communication. Because every bite you take is either telling your muscles to retreat or inviting them back into service. If you have ever felt smaller than you once were, not in height, but in force, in confidence, in presence, then this conversation is for you. There is a kind of nourishment that does not just support muscle, it calls it back. It reminds the body that it is still needed, still capable, still meant to carry you forward with strength and dignity. And once you understand that, you will never look at your plate the same way again. There is a dangerous myth that settles into the mind after 60. It says decline is natural, weakness is earned, and loss of strength is the body keeping time with the calendar. But biology does not own a calendar. Your muscles do not know your age. They only know one thing. Are they needed or are they ignored? Think of muscle as a loyal workforce. When work disappears, workers leave. Not out of laziness, not out of failure, but because the signal to stay is gone. Sarcopenia is not muscle death. It is muscle unemployment. And that distinction changes everything. Muscle loss is not aging, met a man in his late 60s who told me he felt invisible inside his own body. He said, "I'm still here, but my body doesn't show up for me anymore." He had accepted that standing slowly, gripping railings and avoiding stairs was just life now. No drama, no anger, just quiet acceptance. And that acceptance was doing more damage than time ever could. Muscle lives on feedback. Use, nourish, demand or neglect, underfeed, excuse. Every day your body asks a simple question: do I still need this tissue? If the answer is unclear, the body is efficient. It lets it go. This is where most people misunderstand aging. They think loss is inevitable. So they stop sending clear messages. Meals become smaller, softer, easier. Movement becomes cautious, minimal, optional. The body reads that message perfectly. It hears retreat. But here is the part that should stop you cold. When that same man began sending different signals, his body responded, not dramatically, not overnight, but unmistakably. He ate with intention instead of habit. He stood up more often. He gave his muscles a reason to clock in again, and they did. Muscles a reason to clock in again, and they did. Does not require youth. It requires instruction. The body is always adapting to the environment you create. When you treat yourself like someone fragile, the body complies. When you treat yourself like someone still capable, it listens just as closely. This is not about chasing youth. It is about refusing miscommunication. Too many people speak comfort to their bodies when what the body needs is clarity. Comfort says rest, Soften, slow down. Clarity says stay ready. Look at the animal kingdom. Strength fades only when function fades. Wolves do not lose muscle because they age. They lose muscle when they stop hunting. The human body follows the same law, but we talk ourselves out of it with stories about age. The tragedy is not muscle loss itself. The tragedy is believing you have no influence over it. That belief disconnects you from action, and disconnection is what accelerates decline. When muscle withdraws, independence follows. When independence follows, shrinks. Confidence goes with it, and slowly the world feels bigger and heavier, not because it changed, but because your physical voice in it became quieter. But muscles remember. They remember what it felt like to be useful, to lift, to stabilize, to protect. Even after years of neglect, they are not gone. They are dormant. The moment you change the conversation, everything shifts. When nourishment becomes deliberate instead of accidental, when movement becomes purposeful instead of cautious, when you stop negotiating with weakness and start inviting strength back into the room, the body is not your enemy in aging. It is your interpreter. It translates your daily choices into tissue posture, balance, and power. And once you understand that muscle loss is not punishment but feedback, you stop feeling helpless. You realize the conversation is still open and you are still allowed to speak. Tell me when you're ready, and I'll continue with core explanation. Part 2, where we uncover why comfort foods fail aging muscle and why comfort foods fail you. What kind of nourishment actually sends a growth signal? There is a reason comfort foods feel safe. They ask nothing of us. They slide down easily, warm the senses, and reassure the nervous system that nothing difficult is coming. And in moments of stress or grief, that has value. But when comfort becomes the default language of nourishment, the body adapts to that expectation. It stops preparing for challenge, and muscle by its nature only exists to meet challenge. As we age, digestion becomes more efficient, not weaker. That may sound strange, but the body gets better at extracting what it needs from smaller amounts. The problem is not absorption. The problem is signaling. Many traditional foods provide calories and familiarity, but they do not send a clear message to muscle tissue that rebuilding is required. This is why so many people over 60 eat regularly, feel full, and still grow weaker. The body is being fed but not instructed. There is a biological switch inside muscle cells that determines whether they grow or shrink. It is not activated by warmth, nostalgia, or quantity alone. It is activated by specific nutrients that indicate survival demands. When those nutrients are missing, the muscle hears silence, and silence tells the body to conserve, not build. I've seen this pattern play out in countless lives. A woman in her early 70s told me she ate very well, homemade soups, broths, soft grains, and vegetables every day. She did everything she was told was healthy, yet she gelled to lift a kettle with one hand. When we look closer, the issue was not carelessness. It was misplaced trust. She'd been nourishing comfort, not capability. The body does not respond to food based on how virtuous it appears. It responds based on chemical information. Certain foods whisper to muscle, maintaining what little remains. Other foods speak with authority. They say prepare, reinforce, adapt. This is where many people cling to tradition without question. Tradition can be wise, but it can also become outdated when context changes. A food that once supported survival during scarcity may not support strength during longevity. Living longer requires different instructions. Muscle tissue is expensive for the body to maintain. It demands energy, protein, and recovery. If the body does not sense a return on that investment, it reallocates resources elsewhere. This is not cruelty, it is intelligence. The mistake is assuming the body will keep muscles simply because you want it to. Desire is not a signal. Behavior is when meals are small, soft, and low in the specific compounds that stimulate muscle synthesis. The body concludes that physical demand has ended. That conclusion becomes your physical reality. Chairs feel lower, steps feel lower, steeper, balance feels uncertain. But when the body receives a different message, everything recalibrates. Strength is not added all at once. It is food as a message to the body, negotiated bite by bite, signal by signal. The difference between decline and resilience often comes down to whether your food challenges the body to stay strong, not harshly, not aggressively, but clearly. This is why the focus must shift from comfort to communication, from tradition to intention, from feeding the past to building the future. Because once the body senses that strength is still required, it begins to organize itself accordingly. And when that happens, something subtle but profound changes. You stop feeling like you are managing decline. You start feeling like you are participating in life again. And that brings us to the deeper question. If comfort is not enough, what kind of nourishment actually speaks the language of muscle? What kind of food tells the body, do not let go yet? That answer begins with understanding protein, not as a category, but as a message, and not all proteins are heard equally. Most people think protein is protein, a number on a label, a box to tick. Eat enough and the body will sort it out. But aging muscle does not respond to numbers. It responds to quality, to precision, to whether the message arrives loud enough to be taken seriously. Imagine trying to wake someone in a deep sleep. You can whisper their name for hours and nothing happens. Or you can say it once clearly and they open their eyes. Aging muscle is in that deep sleep. It does not need more noise. It needs the right sound. This is where the conversation changes, because the food that rebuilds muscle after 60 is not the one most people expect. It is not diluted, softened, or stripped of its strength. It is dense, complete, intact. It carries a full spectrum of amino acids in proportion the human body instantly recognizes. This is why certain animal foods stand apart, not because they are fashionable, not because they are traditional, but because they deliver a signal the body evolved to understand. Eggs, for example, are not just nourishment, they're instruction. They contain every amino acid required to build human tissue in a form that requires minimal translation. When an aging body receives that, it does not hesitate. It knows exactly what to do. I once worked with a retired school teacher who had lost confidence in her own body. She said she felt brittle, like one wrong movement would crack something. She ate light, carefully afraid of doing harm. When she began including whole eggs daily, not as a supplement, but as a cornerstone, something unexpected happened. Her fear began to soften before her muscles fully returned. Because strength does that. Even the promise of it changes how you move through the world. The body is not sentimental about food, it is pragmatic. It asks, can this be used to repair what is breaking down? Can this justify keeping muscle tissue alive? When the answer is yes, muscle synthesis turns on. When the answer is maybe, it stays off. This is why watered-down protein sources, the protein that speaks loudest, fail older adults. They require digestion, conversion, compensation. An aging muscle has less patience for negotiation. It wants clarity. Eggs deliver that clarity. So do certain dairy foods when tolerated. So does properly prepared meat. These foods are not about excess. They are about sufficiency, about giving the body exactly what it needs, without forcing it to borrow from reserves it no longer wants to use. There is also something psychologically important here. Eating food that supports strength changes how you see yourself. You stop identifying as someone who must be careful, small, and restrained. You start identifying as someone worth maintaining, worth investing in. That shift matters because the body follows identity as much as chemistry. When you eat like someone who expects to remain capable, your posture changes, your movement changes, your decisions change, and the body aligns with that expectation. This is not about returning to some imagined past. It is about choosing a future where your body remains an ally instead of a liability, where you do not shrink your life to match your weakness, but rebuild strength to match your life. Protein quality is not a detail, it is a declaration. It tells the body whether you plan to stay engaged or step aside. And once that declaration is made, the body asks for one more thing, a specific trigger, a switch that tells muscle now, not someday, not gradually, now. That switch is small, powerful, and often overlooked. And understanding it is where real reversal begins. There is a moment in every rebuilding process when hesitation must end. A moment when the body stops waiting and starts acting. In muscle, that moment is triggered by a very specific signal. Without it, effort drifts. With it, repair begins. That signal is leucine. Leucine is not magic. It is not a trend. It is simply the amino acid that tells muscle tissue very clearly that the time for maintenance is over and the time for rebuilding has arrived. Think of it as the green light at an empty intersection. Calories may be present, protein may be present, but without that light, muscle does not move. This is where so many well-intentioned people fail without realizing it. They eat enough, sometimes more than enough, but the protein is spread thin, diluted across foods that never reach the threshold needed to flip the switch. The result is frustration. I'm eating well, they say, and they are, but the body is still waiting for permission. Aging muscle has a higher threshold, not because it is broken, but because it is cautious. It has learned efficiency over decades. It will not invest resources unless the signal is unmistakable. Leucine provides that unmistakable clarity. This is why a small amount of the right food often outperforms a large amount of the wrong one. A couple of whole eggs can do more, the muscle-on switch explained, for muscle synthesis than a bowl of soft protein, poor comfort food. A serving of properly prepared meat can speak louder than a day of grazing. I remember a woman who told me she felt tired after meals, heavy but not stronger. When we adjusted her meals to include one clear leucine-rich anchor, something shifted. She fuller, she felt steadier, her steps became more confident, her energy more directional. The body had finally received a message it trusted. Leucine does not work in isolation, it works as part of a pattern. It tells the body that protein is not accidental today, that nourishment has intention, that strength is still required. This is where timing matters. Muscles are most responsive when they have been slightly challenged after walking, lifting, standing more than usual. The combination of movement and a leucine-rich meal tells the body a complete story. Demand followed by supply, effort followed by support. That is how tissue learns to stay. There is also a deeper lesson here. The body does not respond to vague effort. It responds to decisive action. Half signals produce half results. Clear signals produce adaptation. Many people over 60 live in a state of physical ambiguity, not resting fully, not challenging fully, eating enough to survive, not enough to rebuild, moving enough to get by, not enough to stimulate growth. The body mirrors that uncertainty. Leucine represents commitment. It is the body saying, I believe you. When that belief is established, muscle stops disappearing quietly in the background. It starts returning slowly at first, then with confidence, and with muscle comes something else, stability. When your muscles are awake, your joints feel safer, your balance improves, your nervous system relaxes. Fear of falling begins to loosen its grip. That fear, more than weakness itself, is what shrinks lives. Strength does not shout, it reassures. It allows you to move without rehearsing disaster. It lets you live forward instead of guarding backward. But this process is not only biochemical, it is psychological. When you consistently send your body clear signals, you begin to trust it again. And when you trust your body, you stop negotiating with your limitations. That trust becomes momentum. And momentum is what carries you into the next phase. Because muscle is not just about tissue, it is about what strength makes possible. And what strength makes possible is independence. Independence is not a philosophical idea. It is not a slogan or a value you frame on a wall. Independence is physical. It lives in your legs when you stand up without planning it. It lives in your hands when you carry your own bags. It lives in your spine when you turn without bracing for pain. And when muscle fades, independence does not leave all at once. It erodes quietly through small negotiations. You barely notice making. You start choosing chairs, strength, balance, and independence with arms. You avoid stairs if there is an elevator. You plan your day around energy instead of desire. None of this feels dramatic. It feels sensible, responsible. But over time, those choices redraw the borders of your life. Not because you wanted less, but because your body stopped offering more. This is why muscle is not vanity after 60, it is sovereignty. I once spoke with a man who told me he stopped traveling because he was afraid of unfamiliar bathrooms and low hotel beds. Not illness, not pain, fear of not being able to get up easily. That is how strength loss shows itself, not in the mirror, but in the decisions you quietly stop making. When muscle returns, even modestly, the world changes shape. Steps feel shorter, distances feel manageable, objects feel lighter, not because they are, but because you are no longer calculating risk with every movement. Your nervous system relaxes when it senses physical capability. Confidence is not bravado, it is the absence of constant self-monitoring. This is where rebuilding muscle intersects with dignity. Needing help is not shameful, but being forced into dependence when it was preventable carries a quiet grey. Muscle protects you from that grief by keeping choices available. Food that builds muscle is not just feeding tissue, it is feeding possibility. When your meals consistently support strength, you are not just nourishing your body, you are preserving options. The option to live alone longer, the option to play with grandchildren without sitting out, the option to play with grandchildren without sitting out, option to recover faster when life inevitably knocks you down. And there is something deeply grounding about feeling physically capable. It stabilizes the mind. Anxiety decreases when the body feels competent. Depression loosens its grip when movement feels accessible. Strength creates a feedback loop of agency. You act more because you can, and because you act more, you grow stronger. This is why muscle loss accelerates decline beyond the physical. It teaches the mind to expect limitation, and the mind, once convinced, begins to cooperate with that story. Rebuilding muscle rewrites that narrative. It tells the mind we are not finished, and the mind responds with curiosity instead of caution. But this is not just about daily convenience, it is about resilience. Muscle is your metabolic reserve. When illness strikes, when stress rises, when recovery is needed, muscle is what the body draws from. Without it, small challenges become large ones. With it, the body absorbs impact and adapts. Think of muscle as stored strength for future you. Every meal that supports it is an act of foresight. Every choice to nourish capability over comfort is a vote for continued self-reliance. And perhaps most importantly, muscle restores trust. Trust that your body, rebuilding identity through strength, will hold you, that it will respond when asked, that it will not betray you at the moment you need it most. That trust changes how you show up in relationships. You are less guarded, less apologetic, less preoccupied with your own fragility. Strength frees attention, and attention is what allows you to be present, engaged, and generous with others. This is why rebuilding muscle is never just a physical project. It is a reclaiming of space in the world, space to move, space to choose, space to live without shrinking. And as that space expands, something deeper begins to emerge. Not just independence, but identity. Because when your body becomes capable again, it reminds you of who you are beneath the accommodations you've been making. That is where this journey ultimately leads, not to bigger muscles, but to a fuller sense of self. When the body grows stronger, something unexpected happens. The mirror does not change first. The scale may not change at all. What changes is the way you inhabit yourself. You take up space differently. You pause less before moving. You stop asking permission from your own body. Identity is not only shaped by beliefs, it is shaped by feedback. For years, many people over 60 receive the same feedback again and again. Be careful, slow down, sit, rest, let someone else do it. That feedback trains the mind to see the self as fragile. And once that identity takes root, even the strongest encouragement feels unrealistic. But strength disrupts that story. I remember a woman who told me she felt like she had become small on the inside, not physically small, psychologically reduced. She had adjusted her personality to match her weakness, softer voice, less initiative, fewer opinions expressed with confidence. When her body began responding to proper nourishment and strength returned to her legs and arms, her family noticed something before she did. She was more direct, more present, more herself. The body and identity are in constant conversation. When the body feels capable, the mind remembers agency. When the mind remembers agency, it stops narrating life as something happening to you and starts narrating it as something you participate in. This is why rebuilding muscle later in life often brings emotional release. Old grief surfaces, old pride returns. You realize how much of yourself you packed away not because you wanted to, but because your body no longer supported expression. Muscle is expression. It allows intention to become action. Without it, even strong desires stay trapped in thought. There is also a spiritual layer to this. Strength invites responsibility. When you feel capable, you feel called to show up, to contribute, to remain useful. Purpose does not retire, it only waits for a body that can carry it. Many people mistake humility for disappearance. They think stepping back is wisdom. Sometimes it is, but sometimes it is resignation wearing a polite mask. Strength helps you tell the difference. When you nourish your body properly, you send yourself a message that goes beyond health. You say, I expect to remain relevant. That expectation shapes behavior. You plan differently. You commit differently. You stop living as if the best chapter is behind you. Rebuilding muscle is an act of self-respect. It is saying that your later years are not a winding down, but a different expression of strength. Quieter perhaps, more refined, but no less real. And this is where the transformation becomes irreversible. Once you feel strength returning, even in small ways, you cannot unlearn it. You stop identifying as someone declining and start identifying as someone adapting. That identity fuels consistency. Consistency fuels results. The body becomes proof that change is still possible. And that proof is powerful. It spills into every area of life. Relationships improve because you are less withdrawn. Decisions sharpen because you trust yourself again. Fear loosens because you are no longer negotiating with collapse. Strength does not make you invincible, it makes you available to life, to challenge, to meaning. And that is the real victory over sarcopenia. Not bigger muscles, but a bigger presence. A return